Please enjoy this ad-free episode as part of our Academic Integrity series sponsored by Pangram Labs, the world's leading AI detection tool. Try it out at pangram.com. That's PANGRAM.com.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. And with me, I have, as always, for this amazing academic integrity series, he is the co-host who is the most. And you should know that by now because he is Bradley Emmy, CTO and co-founder at Pangram Labs. Bradley, how you doing?
Hey, Elvin, how's it going? Good to be here today. Really excited about today's podcast, actually.
Oh, me too. You know how we do. We go right into it. So let's bring her in right away. She is Dr. Kelly Ahuna, and she's director of the Office of Academic Integrity at the University at Buffalo. Kelly, how you doing today?
I'm great. That's the most enthusiastic introduction I've ever had. So thank you.
You got it. Well,
we always bring the energy here on the EdUp Experience.
And I'm excited that you work at the Office of Academic Integrity, which I really am excited about. So, okay, Kelly, get us started. Tell us about what you do and how you do it.
Sure. I am the director of the office. Like you say, it is a rare thing to have a standalone Office of Academic Integrity at a U.S. institution. I am the inaugural director. In 2019, UB started an Office of Academic Integrity. They had done a self-study, for those of you who are familiar with the McCabe survey that ICAI, the International Center for Academic Integrity, does. UB had done that survey, did a deep dive into academic integrity, surveying students, surveying faculty, surveying staff. And one of the things that came out of that was the desire to have a standalone office. So I started in 2019. I hired an associate director very shortly after. And just this past fall, after 5 years, we were able to hire a third person. So now we are a team of 3. And we really do everything. I mean, we do a lot of prevention kind of education with our students. We do a lot of work with faculty on assessment and properly handling things. And really, there is a bullet in my job description that says that I will elevate the value of integrity on campus, which, you know, we're a 32,000 student campus. It's a lot to have in my job description, but I feel the weight of that and the importance of that.
Absolutely. And I mean, I feel like University of Buffalo is fairly well known, but I mean, could you just give our listeners maybe a little more context on the university? Like what kind of students do you guys have? And like kind of what are some of the unique aspects of working at University of Buffalo?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. UB is what we're called, is one of the State University of New York schools. We're actually with Stony Brook. We're one of the flagship institutions. We have 12 standalone schools, you know, a School of Medicine, a School of Law, College of Arts and Sciences, that kind of thing. And our students come from New York State, obviously, as a state institution, but also from all over the world. We have a really large international student population, and that really makes our community interesting and great. But it does introduce issues around academic integrity and how people define it and how people think about it. And so, yeah, that's our school.
Speaking of which, how to define academic. Perfect transition, Kelly. I know,
segue.
Right? You're welcome.
She's been on the podcast before. She gets it. She knows. So, Kelly, tell us, and I'm curious to hear, we're asking everyone the same question. How do you define academic integrity?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, this is the fundamental question, right? And I think I've been reading a lot where people are talking about how the definition of academic integrity is changing. And I really counter that in my thinking. I think of academic integrity as a value. And I think the value is the same as it's always been, which is that academic integrity is the idea that when students turn in work and it's assessed by faculty, that what they turn in is a legitimate reflection of what they know and what they can do within the parameters of the assignment. And that's, you know, obviously the parameters of the assignment change. The actual kind of academic work we're asking students to do might be changing, but that value to me is the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that definition. It's like super clean, like crisp, concise. I guess like maybe like why do you think it is that like people think that it's changing so much? Because like, I mean, maybe it's just that like the definition has remained the same, but obviously like the parameters have changed quite a bit potentially, or like kind of do you think it's something else?
No, I mean, I think that's true. And I think a lot of it comes from, like, especially in academic integrity work, nobody is trained to do academic integrity work. Like, we all come to this work from different backgrounds. And so I think your background matters a lot. For me, just really briefly, I got certified to teach high school English back a long time ago. Then I moved into student affairs. I worked with students in residential life for a while, came back to get my doctorate in sociology of education. I moved to faculty and taught critical thinking. Then I moved to teaching teachers. And then I came here. So I sort of have, like, I think, a broad perspective on education as a concept. Not so much, I don't care so much about the like nitty gritty of the assignment you're going to give in this particular engineering class. And I think because of that, I try to look at it. It's the same value in engineering and in English, but obviously assignments are very different. And I think that, obviously artificial intelligence has changed the conversation, and people are trying to think about how can we infuse artificial intelligence in education, which is a great conversation to have. But I think the infusion doesn't change the definition of academic integrity, if that makes sense.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, I think, like, when people are talking about AI today, obviously, like, they are largely talking about assessment, right? Like, they're being
Right.
like, okay, like, are the assessments that I used to that used to just kind of like uphold academic integrity just kind of by themselves, like,
Right.
without me doing much, like, now, like, it's a little bit just harder to enforce, right? And so, like, I think, like, a lot of people are thinking about, oh, like, it's not that, like, I don't like the value of academic integrity has changed. It's just like I need to have different ways of assessing my students in order to assess students in a way that, like, promotes academic integrity, right? Like, would you largely agree with that, or do you think it's kind of like something else?
No, I largely agree with that. And I'm very sympathetic to both faculty and students on this issue, because, I mean, faculty really do have to rethink, if they care about academic integrity, right? They really have to rethink assessment. And it's not a small rethink. It's not like a little tweak, it's a major overhaul. But I'm also really sympathetic to students, because I think the gray line that they're not allowed to cross, that is grayer and grayer all the time. And I think, we're at the early stages still of making rules around this. And I think, some faculty are going to this idea of saying to students, you could use AI to brainstorm, but not to write. But the line between brainstorming and writing is really hard for a student to identify.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think, like, we work in AI detection. So, like, one really common, like, misunderstanding that we see all the time is, teacher allows student to use AI for brainstorming, and then they just very liberally take quotes from the brainstorm
Right.
and, like,
Right.
drop them in the paper. And, like, yes, that is AI generated writing.
Right.
And I think, like, it's, you ask probably 100 teachers whether or not that's okay. And, like, 50 will say yes, 50 will say no. Right.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I think, like, part of it is clear communication, but, like, part of it's also just kind of the assessment design itself, right?
Right. Agreed. Yeah. And I think for me, and working in higher ed, the K-12 years are all the more important now. Like, as our students, I think as every year goes by that AI has been available to students, we're seeing it's harder and harder to sort of help students understand when and why and how they can use it. And so I just think we need in the K-12 years to make sure our students don't, I think students can use it for performative learning. Like, they feel like that they make a product.
Yeah, say more about that. Yeah, I've never heard that term before.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they make a product and it feels impressive. And so they feel, proud that they've created something. But could they recreate it on their own without the AI? Did they, like, who was thinking here, them or the AI tool? And so I think that's the problem. When it was very new, we had a computer science instructor here at UB talking about how students in his class who were using ChatGPT to write code had an elevated sense of their abilities, and were more likely to actually fail the class than students who weren't using AI. And I think that's the danger. And I think when you're a young learner, you're not in a situation to be able to know for yourself if you've really learned or not. And that's where teachers and instructors come in.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think it could go either way, though, because, I mean, I've read, like, Trisha's book, like, The Opposite of Cheating.
Yeah,
and, like,
sure.
I think, like, one thing that she mentioned is, like, she goes really deep into like why students cheat and like kind of I think it's a very like interesting, like, very thorough survey. And like I think one of the things that stuck with me is that like students often see AI output and they're like, oh, this is so much better than anything that I could do.
Right.
But at the same time, like that's a little bit of kind of just like a beginner's mindset. Like it's like, they just haven't like progressed to the point where like they could produce something that is better than AI, but like they don't have the self-belief that they can get there. And
Right.
yeah, I think like part of like, convincing students, part of like, academic integrity is convincing students that like that they can get there, or that like there is value in them learning the thing, and like, not necessarily just like, using ChatGPT out of this like learned helplessness.
Right. And I think for students to understand too that instructors would rather hear what they can do. They'd rather read their effort and see what they can do. I'm thinking about writing a blog for something about, ICAI. We talk about these values that underlie academic integrity, which is, honesty, trust, respect, courage. I can't think of them all off the top of my head, of course. But I just feel like AI has introduced this trust barrier between faculty and students in a way that I haven't really seen before. I mean, just this past spring semester, I got called to probably 6 different faculty meetings to talk with faculty about how to handle AI. And there's just kind of a pervasive feeling among instructors, like, my students are all using AI. I tell them not to, they use it anyway. And then students are feeling like, my instructors tell me I can't use AI, and they use it to make their slides. And there's like this kind of it's introduced something. And to your point about,
and like both sides are right, like,
right.
Yeah.
And to your point about making students feel like they can create something, I mean, I think the value of the instructor-student relationship is the instructor helps you grow as a learner, as a thinker, as a person. And if that trust is questioned, I just don't think that happens as much.
That makes a lot of sense. Like the trust barrier is kind of interesting, and definitely like kind of encapsulates a lot of like what we've been seeing too. Like, what do you kind of see as like the way to kind of overcome that for an instructor? Like, what kind of language do you advocate using to like kind of build back that trust?
I mean, honestly, I think it almost has to be systemic. I feel like, and I know I'm preaching to the choir because you guys do AI detection, but I think there's a place for AI detection in this to say to students, we care about your learning, and we want to make sure that the system is fair and it's just set up in such a way so that it's not every instructor trying to make their judgments about things. I think we give rules and we enforce rules. And that's what we've always done. We just have to be more clear about what our rules around AI are going to be. Now, that being said, I'm not anti-AI. Students are going to need AI for the workforce. It's our responsibility to make sure they get those skills. But there's a time and a place for it. And there's definitely going to be times in learning where you're not going to be able to use the tools in a way to make sure that the learning is met. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, when the instructor is saying to the student, like, I don't want you to use AI, like, it's not, I don't want you to use AI because it's an evil technology, or I don't want you to use AI because like, I don't think this is like important or anything like that. It's just like, I don't want you to use AI because I'm invested in your learning.
Right.
And this is how we're going to achieve those learning objectives here.
Right. I mean, the learning objectives have to be the North Star. I just think they have to be like, I want you to be able to perform this thing by yourself. And then once you can do it by yourself, then in the future you can use AI, as you want. But until you master it, we don't know if you can do it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Show us. Yeah.
And like I was just having a discussion with a friend yesterday. I was like, I feel like educators in today's day and age in 2025, like they just feel a lot of pressure to like bring AI in and like embrace AI and like, have it be kind of like a part of the classroom. But I think like also there might be certain contexts where like it actually just might not make sense to bring AI in. Like, like what if you're teaching like a music class or something like that, where like, inherently kind of like the artistry of learning the craft like has almost nothing to do with AI whatsoever.
Right.
And so like there's this kind of like push pull where it's like I think like people are feeling all of this pressure to integrate AI. But like it might not be relevant. Like it may actually not be essential to the learning objectives of that class. And that's, I think that's okay.
Right.
Um,
I think that's better. I mean, there has never been a technology that has been infused in everything. I mean, there's a time and place and the instructors are the experts in the subject matter. So, it's up to them to decide. Although I will say there are instructors who want to bury their head in the sand and pretend like AI is not happening. And that's not helpful. Instructors have to continue to learn too.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, with actually kind of like changing gears a little bit, would love to just hear a little bit more about kind of the work that you guys are doing with the Academic Integrity Office. And like, everyone like thinks about an Academic Integrity Office and they think like, oh, these are just the people that hear about like cheating cases, right? But could you talk about like kind of like where you guys kind of go beyond that and like kind of like all of the great things that you do?
Yeah, I sure can, because I just want to say when this job opened, my husband is the one who came home one day and said, I think you should apply for this job. And I said to him, who wants to work with people who have been cheating all day long? That sounds just terrible. And that's not what it is at all. I mean, going back to that bullet in my job description about elevating the value, we do a lot of sort of messaging and education. So we have a team of volunteer student integrity ambassadors who are undergraduate students. They give us a couple hours a week of their time. They table across campus. We've got stickers and some bling that we give out. I love to have our stickers on laptops and water bottles and such. Be a better bull is our hashtag because we're the bulls. And we designed an in-house 30-minute academic integrity module that all new students can do to show them what our standards are. This comes back to what I said earlier about having a lot of international students. And in the early days, me feeling like we weren't doing our due diligence to make them know what our standards are. Like we expect them to live up to them.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
How do they know what they are? So we developed that course, and that's available to all undergraduates and graduates. We do remediation with students who have a case. Our remediation is pretty involved. It's undergraduate students who have one dishonesty case can clear their record with our office if they do remediation. So the remediation is kind of an optional educational intervention. They meet with one of the three professionals in the office to talk through what happened. They do a 3-module course in our learning management system that we built in-house. The first module is all reflection about what happened and how it affects them, how it affects other people. The second one is a bunch of different scenarios they have to analyze for what caused the dishonesty, what will happen after the dishonesty, that kind of thing. And then the third module is all about citation and plagiarism and paraphrasing and artificial intelligence. Then they meet with us again. So it's pretty thorough. We're trying to cover all our bases with the goal of helping students not have another offense. So that takes up a lot of our bandwidth because we do meet with each student twice. And we do grade their work.
I'm sure with 30,000 students too, like that's a lot of meetings, a lot of cases.
Yeah. And that was the driving argument for expanding our office to 3 professionals. But then we use the Maxient software system to track our cases. And there's a lot of data you can get out of Maxient. So we can sort of see where there's a lot of cases on campus and help those faculty work on, minimizing that. But we can also see where there are no cases on campus and go to those faculty to say, are you using our process? Are you following our policy? Because I think inconsistent enforcement of the policy is really problematic for students because
interesting.
They know who does and who doesn't enforce the policy. And it also sometimes lets them think, well, I can roll the dice here and see what happens.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff we do.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm very curious. Like, I mean, as like a data guy, like I'm just kind of curious what you guys have like learned from that Maxient data. Like, kind of like what are the things that like the kind of like low cheating clusters have in common versus the high cheating clusters? Was there anything from that data that really surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing for me is the consistency annually of the data. So, for example, 2/3 of our cases are with male students.
Okay.
That feels interesting and strange.
But honestly, that feels a little low to me, but maybe I'm just pessimistic about my own gender.
Also, though, most of our cases are in the STEM fields. The department that reports the most to us is computer science. And there are more men than women in the STEM fields and in computer science here at UB. So are men more likely to cheat than women? Are scientists more likely to cheat than non-scientists? Are faculty just more likely to report in that? Like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of qualitative stuff to try to analyze within that piece of data. But those kinds of things are interesting. What year in school? You would think, like, do more first-year students cheat than seniors? Actually, no. Our numbers are pretty consistent year to year. So those kinds of things are really telling. But then I can also run a report. I can tell the computer science department how many cases they've had in this class with each instructor. I can tell them, all kinds of stuff that helps them in-house work with each other.
Yeah, interesting. Like, I'm curious too, like, kind of how the reporting looks between like instructors and the office, like, and if that potentially has anything to do with it. Like, is like, computer science, professors also like are just like more, used to using technology, I suppose, and like, maybe just like, as a result of just having more like familiarity with the tech and the reporting, like, might be more likely to.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think they use the MOS program. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yes.
MOS is the program that's developed at Stanford to run computer science code through like a plagiarism checker for code. So they use that, and that's a pretty straightforward like report for them to have. I also think they really, really care about students getting help from their TAs, not from each other, not from AI, not from websites. So they really, they're really working on getting students to get authorized help. So they have sort of a, like a departmental commitment that you don't see so much in some of the other departments. But then in other places, like sociology or, something like that, where it's much more writing intensive, I think, first of all, they don't have the numbers, they don't have the volume of students. And it's just a whole different thing. So I get myself in front of faculty whenever I can. When any professor calls me on the phone, asks me a question, I always end with, if you can get me invited to your faculty meeting, I'd be happy to come. Because the more I can demystify the process and be a friendly face for faculty to know that we support them, the better.
Interesting. Yeah. What are you kind of hearing at these faculty meetings? Like, out of curiosity, like kind of like how are kind of like faculty, like, I guess, like thinking about academic integrity, and like what are kind of the ways in which you wish that you could push them in a different way potentially?
I mean, I think obviously artificial intelligence has caused a lot of, I'm going to say, despair. But I think part of the problem is it's hard to get agreement among the faculty. So like I have gone to faculty meetings where some of they're in the same department, and some people are like, we should not have any AI. And some people are like, no, we should really dig into it. And I'm trying to push this idea of programmatic or departmental level policy, maybe policy is too strong a word, guidelines, that as students advance, say you're a sociology major, as you go from the 100 classes to the 400 classes, within the department, they could make determinations about, well, in the 101s, we're not going to do any AI because of whatever. But when they get to the 200s, and it's hard to get that from departments if they can't agree with each other.
Yeah. I mean, professors too, like, are so used to being so independent. Like, this is just like the incentives of academia, right? Like, it's very individualistic, and you get some strong personalities for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, that's our institutional policy right now, is it's up to the instructor. You get to set the rules in your classroom. It's your academic freedom to do that. So we can't make them, but it would be cleaner for students if there was some departmental guideline. Yeah,
absolutely. And do you ever like kind of like retroactively, like, I mean, you see kind of all the cases come through the office, I'm sure, and like, you may see like an assignment come in, and then you might occur to you, you'd be like, like this policy doesn't seem like great, or like it seems like there was a big gray area like in this particular assignment where there couldn't be. Like, do you kind of use the data that you guys are kind of seeing come through the office to like go back and kind of inform like pedagogy and like what those policies should look like?
Yeah, we definitely do. And we also, our website is our main communication with faculty and with students. We have a student page and a faculty page. So we're always updating that too. But like, for example, I'm sure you know, Grammarly. Grammarly has been a big problem for us. We have some students in one of our schools here who were graduate students in a capstone class, writing a capstone paper, and Grammarly is disallowed. It tells you right in the syllabus, tells you right, the instructor is disallowed Grammarly. And many students used it anyway. It's like they have it on their computer, they use it. And so
It's a very invasive app, to be fair.
It is a very invasive app. I have it. Yes. And the instructors started sort of processing the cases as they would do, which is just reaching out to the student to have a conversation. And it just got a little bit blown out of proportion. And then the dean got involved, and then there was a lot of pushback. And this is an example to me of a departmental disagreement, because the higher administrators in the department feel like at the capstone level, using Grammarly is fine. But the instructors felt like at the capstone level, using Grammarly is not fine, because I want to see that the student can write their own paper. So a lot of that, and people don't understand how Grammarly has changed and become a tool that writes for you. And so I feel like my job now, honestly, I can't keep up with all the things I have to read and know and learn. And, every morning, my first hour of my day is spent just like reading. And then I try to educate the faculty and the students about what they need to know. So
yeah, definitely. And I mean, the tools are changing all the time too. I mean, like Grammarly is the prime example of this. Like Grammarly just used to just check your grammar and nothing else.
Yeah.
And somehow, like, they've evolved into this full blown like AI editing software. But they still have the reputation and the kind of mind share as this, like, this is just a spelling and grammar checker.
Right. Right. And students will say, when they appeal a case, they'll say, my 9th grade English teacher told me to get Grammarly. Like an authority in my life told me to get Grammarly, and now I'm in trouble for it. Well, okay, but when you were in 9th grade, the tool was different. And so.
Right. Absolutely. So kind of curious, like, on that regard of like, kind of like, the software tools, obviously we do AI detection at a very like, heated, controversial topic, as you can imagine.
Yes.
So kind of curious, like how much you kind of like give faculty discretion to use their own tools for, collecting evidence, checking things for AI, checking for plagiarism, versus like kind of there being a more kind of like centralized standard for software and tools.
This is a really important question for me, Bradley, because we had a student who started a change.org petition to get us to shut off our software.
I saw that.
Yeah. So we use Turnitin. We have Turnitin for both plagiarism detection and AI detection. I know a lot about Turnitin because of this particular situation. I read the white paper about how it works and what it does. And our policy, this is more procedure than policy, but is that faculty use Turnitin. That's the tool that we have vetted. That's the tool that we trust. But our standard of evidence is preponderance, which is what is most likely, kind of, 51% kind of thing. And we don't accept the Turnitin report on its own as preponderance. So there has to learn
that preponderance is actually a pretty high standard.
Yeah, well, but it's not clear and convincing. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. Yeah. And so we ask faculty that they have to have more evidence. Like, what else is there? Does the assignment not answer what was asked? Does it have hallucinations? Are the citations faulty? Can the student not discuss what they wrote? All those things. There has to be at least something else for us to process the case. But we will have faculty, because we are a large university, who don't know we have turned it in, or who run it through a free tool online. And we always send it back and say, you have to put it through the tool that we vetted.
Yeah, makes sense. Do you guys take MOSs as evidence by itself?
We do. The instructor always has to have that conversation with the student. So in computer science, it's pretty easy to say to the student, tell me how you wrote this code. And if the student can't explain, that's the other piece of evidence.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, like MOS, like, is more just kind of like similarity, right? Like, it's kind of just like, oh, like, it's not necessarily like this code was AI generated. It's just really similar to like something else that we know.
Right.
And that's a little bit more clear cut. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's part of the difference. We were talking before about the case numbers. Is I think faculty feel more confident in the coding, because if you talk to a student and they can't explain how they wrote the code, is different than if you talk to a student about an English paper and they could sort of kind of talk about it,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think like another thing with like writing, and like we obviously talked to a lot of writing instructors, like, I think like there's also kind of a knowledge gap here of like, a lot of instructors can't exactly like pinpoint with their finger like evidence that something is AI generated. Like
Right.
it's just like it's so much more subjective. And it's a lot of weak evidence too. It's not like necessarily like any one like particular thing. I mean, I guess like a bad citation is like
Right.
clear cut, but like, the AIs are like not doing that anymore, first of all.
Right.
And second of all, that doesn't always happen. And
Right.
so, being able to like point to specific things that, is evidence beyond like a Turnitin AI score, it's very difficult, like in a lot of times. And I think like, a lot of people just don't want to go through that.
Right. But I do want to say a lot of schools have turned off their AI detection or aren't using AI detection. And I think that's a mistake. I really feel like it's much more unfair to students to have every faculty member using their own judgment to see if they feel like it's AI. You know what I mean?
I mean,
I
you're
just think,
obviously preaching to the choir.
yeah, right. Right.
But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I do think that like, several studies have emerged about like the human false positive rate, which is really kind of like the bar, right? It's just like, okay, like, the bar isn't like, 0%, like humans make mistakes too. And like if
Right.
we're asking all of our instructors to look at things by eye and like tell us like, just based on their vibes, like whether or not they think something is AI or not, there's going to be like an 8% false positive rate.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
that's not zero. That's also not like 100, but like that's something. And, I think,
Right.
there's, I mean, obviously we believe that there's a capability of doing better with software.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, can I jump in real quick, Kelly? Because you said, and I've never heard this before,
Yeah.
it's unfair to the students. Can we dive deep into that? Can you explain
Sure.
that? That's awesome.
Yeah.
What?
I mean, I think if you have 500 faculty at a university and they're all reading, they collect their assignments, they're reading them, and they say, "Oh, Bradley's feels off to me."
Yeah, Bradley, not mine. It's always Bradley.
But Elvin's feels good. Yeah. And then
I know I look like a cheater.
they're using their spidey sense,
Yeah.
to determine if it's AI. Just the inconsistency of that
Got it.
feels greater to me than the AI detection being applied across all assignments.
Definitely. But I mean, like, some people feel that that's just like more acceptable, which is, kind of, yeah, a little bit strange. I mean, I think maybe it's just that like, I don't know, like humans just inherently trust other humans in a way that humans don't have that inherent trust in software.
Yeah, well, it goes back to what I was saying before about this trust barrier, right? And I think a lot of schools who are turning it off are saying, "Oh, it's introducing distrust," but the distrust is there. I mean, the faculty have the distrust. The student, you know what I mean? That's to me, it's not having the software tool that's causing the distrust. It's the other things. So I just think if we normalize the detection as part of the process, we're not trying to catch students. We're saying, we apply this to make sure everybody's doing things fairly.
Yeah. Actually, that did kind of like raise another interesting question for you. I think we've asked a lot of people this and like gotten pretty polarized responses. So just curious, like what your take is.
Yeah.
Like, would you be an advocate of like students having access to the same AI detection software that the teachers have, so that they can validate that what they're turning in is clean before they actually submit their assignment?
I'm going to go with no.
Okay.
Back a long time ago, I used to teach an online research class, and we had the plagiarism detection tool, and we would let students use that to sort of correct their work. But my feeling about this is, if you're doing work according to the rules, right? You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You don't have anything to worry about. You really don't. You should be able to, the way our system is set up with consultative resolution, where students and faculty have to talk to each other, you should be able to explain yourself and your work. I think if you give students access to the tool, the threat of them just like putting it in AI and then, mixing it, running it through humanizers, tweaking it until it's not detected anymore is a real threat. I don't think there's anything educational in a student, unless we don't trust the tools and we think the tools are going to show us false positives, which is not where I am on the tools.
Well, I guess like where my mind went with this was just that like, if we're, saying that this trust barrier exists, right, then like if both sides have access to the tool, does that like, help kind of like break down that barrier? That was kind of all I had in mind.
Yeah. And I still think no, because I think the perspectives are so different. I think the student's perspective should be about creation, like creating the work, like doing the mental work that goes into getting it done. And the instructor's responsibility is on the checking.
Right. That makes sense. And like, yeah, I mean, if you kind of like set it up like this, then it becomes this game where like, students are like then thinking about the game instead of actually thinking about like,
Right.
the actual
Right.
like, assignment in front of them and
Right.
focusing on what they're supposed to learn.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think like, some people like that we've talked to are like, okay, like, there's like kind of like middle ground stuff too. Like, oh, like, what if you only allow the student to see it like once or like twice before turning it in or something like that. So they can't like go back and like, make a bunch of changes and like humanize it until it passes the detectors and such.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'd have to think about that, but my inclination is to say that that's not what the tool's for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And like, I mean, I think like this is not the first time you guys have used an academic integrity tool. Like, students have never had access to like, plagiarism detection software in general.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd like to jump in before I ask you the last question, Kelly, because I do want to give you time to help others who are listening understand the value of having an Office of Academic Integrity. So here's your chance. Pitch everybody in higher ed why every institution of higher education should have an Office of Academic Integrity. What's your pitch, Kelly?
There are so many reasons. I mean, on the one hand, academic integrity is everybody's job, right? That's something we say at ICAI. Like we're all students, faculty, everybody's responsible for that. But having a standalone office for support, for resources, for education, for all of the things that is nobody else's job, like to resource and pay people to just work on this topic, it seems to me a no-brainer, foundational to everything we do. Faculty need support, students need support. Who's going to give it to them? So often I'll talk to people somebody who's a dean in the College of Arts and Sciences, and 10% of their job description is academic integrity. And that just doesn't cut it for the needs of our students and staff and faculty.
Gotcha. All right, Kelly, last question. What do you see as the future of academic integrity?
I'm not going to lie. I think it's a rocky road. Yeah, I guess I shouldn't lie. I think it's a rocky road right now with artificial intelligence. And when I read things like we need to redefine academic integrity, where we started on this podcast talking about how I think it's the value. So I do think we're kind of at a pivotal time in education with the AI is a technology like no other in that it can do everything, right? It's not like the calculator that can only help in math class, just can do everything. So I think it's time to like redouble our commitment. What are we doing here? Like, what is the purpose of education? What do we want our graduates to be able to do? We have to really clarify those things and help students understand that assessments are not set up to torture them in any way, be like, hoops to jump through. They're set up to help them get to a place where they know and are able to do things that are going to make them go out into our communities and be able to perform their jobs. So I think we need to do a little self-reflection, a little doubling down, get our ducks in a row as far as what our rules are going to be and our policies, and just commit and talk about. We need to talk about it all the time. I mean, academic integrity was the original AI. We've been usurped, but I think we need to really keep talking about it.
I like the academic integrity is everyone's job. I love that. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, this has been a great conversation. First, I'm going to outro my co-host, who is the most. He is Bradley Amy, CTO and co-founder at Pangram Labs. Thank you as always, Bradley.
Thanks for having me, Alvin. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Great conversation. And our guest today, no, ladies and gentlemen, she's your guest. She is Dr. Kelly Ahuna, and she's director of the Office of Academic Integrity at the University at Buffalo. Kelly, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Really enjoyed talking to you both.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd.
Thank you for listening. This episode is part of our Academic Integrity series sponsored by Pangram Labs, the world's leading AI detection technology. Try it out at pangram.com. That's PANGRAM.com.